Up next on Inside the SCCA, to build or to rebuild? That is the question.
Make their head drop.
Welcome to episode 200 and something of Inside the SCCA, presented by RaceSchool.com. I'm Ryan Bielanski, and today's show's a good one. I've been looking forward to this. We do a lot of shows about how to drive faster. We talk about new cars and stuff like that, but this one's going to be fun. We're going to talk about what you do, and we've also talked about how you physically recover after a wreck. But this time we're going to talk about how you make your car recover after a wreck. Joining me today on Inside the SCCA, presented by RaceSchool.com, Ryan Gutile. See, yeah. I even asked you when I messed it up. How you doing, my friend?
Good. And you?
I'm doing really good. Welcome to the show. And
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was good. You had a little bit of a moment at the Runoffs this year.
Yeah, I did. I'm going to say it started in Portland with my upside down escapade. But, that one was pretty easy to come back from.
We'll talk about all of that in a moment. But for those of you who have watched the show, and I know you have, you know what's coming. Here is the question that we ask everybody. How did you get started in this crazy sport that we love?
Man, that's a tough one, kind of a long story. You can trace it back to, there's pictures of me in a stroller watching my dad working on his motorcycles, getting ready for races, and it just goes forward from there. You know, I rode motorcycles for a little bit, and I really where my motorsports started was a mailman that was a mailman for my mom's work. Got us turned on to autocross.
Okay.
And my dad and I were building a 66 Mustang Fastback. It was going to be kind of a Shelby clone, show car kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
And well, long story short, we ended up autocrossing it and then built a C prepared 65 Fastback as an autocross car, and just progressed through that. Met people that were running ITC cars and, road racing and autocrossing them, and started crewing for them a little bit, and just really got wrapped in. And knew road racing was where I wanted to be, and ended up getting a job at Roush Racing working on race car stuff. And
oh, cool.
That kind of started the professionalism of it. Raced go-karts a little bit, and moved on to motorcycle racing. And I raced desert until I was racing the Score Series. I ran solo, ran the Baja 1000, all those races, ran the whole series in 16. And I was getting older, and I'm like, I don't bounce good anymore. With age comes the cage,
I love that.
So I told my wife, I'm like, what if I give up this motorcycle racing and go road racing? And she goes, well, talk to me about that. What's that look like? And I go, yeah, I'm thinking like either Spec Miata or Spec Racer Ford, something like that.
Right.
And she goes, well, that sounds good. Let's look at that. And ended up, got in a Miata in a chump car race back, previously chump car, now it's champ car, and had an absolute blast. And that made the decision. I'm like, all right, I got to go Spec Miata racing.
Right.
So at 18, I went to driver school and ran every race that I could in 18. Even went to the Runoffs at Sonoma in 18. That was an experience, but I really didn't belong there when I look back on it.
Yeah.
And then progressed, built a new Spec Miata, and progressed into now I'm doing Spec MX-5 and building cars for people. And it's really turned into actually kind of turned into a business for me. I turned a love into a business a little bit.
Nice. So when you started, were you in Michigan with Roush Racing, or were you out here?
Yeah, in the Livonia area.
Okay, right. So when did you end up coming out here to California?
So I was born and raised out here.
Okay.
And I relocated back there. I spent, I want to say it was about 4 years back there.
Okay.
Building engines, tearing down engines, running dyno,
Nice.
development stuff, that kind of deal. I was in an engine to build department. So
Got it.
that was no chassis stuff. It was all engine stuff, but
Got it. Okay.
learned a ton.
Sure. So you have a mechanical acumen to start with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I take that all the way back to the stroller,
Right. Exactly. So how long did you do bikes before you got into cars?
So I probably ran bikes for 5, 6 years,
Okay.
8 years, maybe.
Okay.
And I still ride off and on, but I haven't raced since, I don't think I've raced since 2016.
Okay. Cool. So when you so autocross was your entry drug to the SCCA, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And how long did you autocross?
From the time I turned 16 until the time my daughter turned 16.
Wow.
And I was off and on. I had, when I was at Roush, I had a little pause in it because all my stuff was out here.
Sure.
But I've always I still keep thinking about taking the SMX car out to an autocross just because, I miss it. It was fun,
Yeah. So do you now have a Spec MX-5 car and a Spec Miata?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. I keep saying my Spec Miata's for sale, but I'm having a hard time cutting myself loose of it. So
Right.
It is available, but I'm not trying very hard.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to love about Spec Miata. We did the whole show. You watched it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going anywhere anytime soon.
No.
There's a huge commitment from Mazda to keep supporting that class, and they're still developing that class as well, which is, I thought when I went into that podcast, I'm like, well, I know they're going to support it, but I didn't realize that they were actually still actively developing stuff for the class, which I think is still fantastic.
Yeah, in fact, this week they sent out an email. I saw they're redoing the front spoilers for the VVT cars, which were kind of unobtainiums. I think Jim Drago was making one on occasion, but now Mazda's going to have one that's supposed to be a new and improved, and they're taking care of us. Mazda takes real good care of us, guys.
Yeah, I've said for a long time, I'm a Honda guy. I started with an ITB CRX with my dad, and then I built an ITC Civic for myself, and the cars in the garage are Hondas, and you kind of, when you learn what one manufacturer does and how they make their cars work, to switch is kind of scary.
Yeah, it is.
But I keep looking at everything that Mazda offers with the parts discounts and the support from Josh and the gang down there and all of that. I kind of think to myself, why would I spend the money to develop kind of on my own? Because Honda doesn't do much for the club racing folks. I'd be doing all of that, and I'm not an engineer. I'm just a guy who likes to get my grease under my nails. I'm a journalist. But I've been working on those cars for so long. I've got the tools to work with Hondas. I got all that stuff. But when I look at it, I'm like, it's kind of dumb not to just make the switch and drink the Kool-Aid like everyone else.
Yeah. That's one of the things I know. I'm a diehard Ford guy. My Mustang and Roush stuff ought to kind of show that. But, this new SMX class, it's got a Fomoco cast into the side of the block. It's like I'm racing Ford again, but yet I got Mazda support because it's 10 times what Ford support is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no question. And Mazda and Ford are kind of in bed with each other right now anyway, so it's kind of, there's a relationship if nothing else.
Right.
So you've made the switch to cars. How hard of a learning curve was it for you on the driving side? I know we're going to talk a lot about building cars in a little bit, but when you've done bikes for so long, is there a big learning curve? How much transferred over?
Not really. I'm going to say, and this is just kind of my feeling on it, that if you're fast on motorcycles, you're going to be fast in cars because the feel, the seat of the pants feel is there. I mean, Danny is a good example. He's a motorcycle racer, and he's quick,
So what did you do in bikes? Did you do road racing or did you do
desert stuff?
Okay.
Yeah. Like the Baja 1000 and races like that,
I would guess that desert, any kind of dirt bike racing is kind of like dirt car racing where you get that seat of the pants feel so good. I spent a lot of time racing on ice. I shouldn't say a lot of time. I spent some time racing on ice. I grew up in Wisconsin, and I did some autocrosses on ice. And, when you grow up in Wisconsin, when you turn 16, Dad takes you out on the lake to teach you how to, get your car mixed up and be able to, turn into the spin and all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of a survival course to try to get you to your 18th birthday. But I would guess that learning dirt on any kind of racing really gives you a heck of a leg up on that seat of the pants car control stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I would tie it back to my first time in a car, autocrossing a Mustang with, 300 or 400 horse and little tires on it, because we didn't, that car didn't have flared fenders and stuff. So it was pretty tail happy. You had to learn how to catch a car,
Yeah. Yeah, and back then, there's no traction control, there's no driver aids, there's none of that kind of stuff. So, very cool. Very cool.
In fact, I'm going to say that was more of a transition going from my Spec Miata to the Spec MX-5.
Okay.
On the brakes side, the ABS was a learning curve for me. When I first went out, I was experiencing an odd problem that nobody had heard of, and my question was, which side of the ABS do you drive on? And nobody really understood what I was talking about.
Right.
I pulled the fuse and went a second quicker at Buttonwillow.
Without the ABS?
It was like, without the ABS. Since then I've learned how to drive it. Now I can drive around it, and figured it out. But initially it's like I was quicker without those aids.
So tell me a little bit about the difference, because we've never talked about this on the show. When you go from a non-ABS car to an ABS car, what does a driver have to think about?
So the easiest way would be to explain what I experienced in this car. And this is the only one that I've had experience with ABS. Everything else has been a non-aided car. And the first easiest place to explain it was at Willow Springs going into turn one. Mm-hmm. I'd come into the brake zone. I'd go to the brakes like I would in a Spec Miata. And about the point that I'm starting to release the brakes, the ABS pump came on and the pedal sunk and I went through the windshield.
Oh.
So it was one of those like, what's going on? And I was fighting different things thinking, well, maybe I've got an issue with the vacuum booster or something like that, because you're flat on the floor down the front straight.
Yeah.
And then you jump off the throttle. Maybe you don't have any assist and the assist comes in later. Because that's kind of what it felt like.
Sure.
So, since I've learned, it has to do with how quick you ramp into the pedal and all of that stuff.
Okay.
But it is a learning curve. But you just got to play with it, just like any other driving stuff. You just got to keep playing with it until you figure it out.
I wonder how that goes for someone like me who I haven't driven a non-ABS street car in, I don't know, 20 years, 25 years. Does that help me when I get to the racetrack and have an ABS race car or not? I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know, because on the street, in theory, you're not driving that hard, but
I am on the autocross course.
That's true. That's true. So I can see where the autocross side of it, that could translate over. What you've learned autocross in an ABS car would translate straight over, I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I don't get to maybe I'm not going fast enough in the autocross to get to the ABS, because I don't get the ABS often on the autocross side. I think my tires, because I've got good autocross tires, the adhesion on the tires exceed the capability of my ABS. Yeah. Because I don't lock up very often. And then when I do, I usually run over about 6 cones, but that's a different discussion altogether. Yeah, that might be whole nother. I might have to get someone with one of the ABS experts out there to do a whole show on that. Because we're gonna get more and more of that when we start transferring over some of these street cars into STU and STL and all that kind of stuff. So that's an interesting thought there on that. What do you find fun about it now? It's you said you
about the driving or the building.
well, so you've turned it into a business. So this is my thing. So I started this podcast a little while ago, and I always if I do this as a job, then what am I going to do as a hobby? And I have found that I'm okay with that. I could do both as a job and a hobby. Was that ever a discussion in your brain when you thought about the business
it's a fine line.
Yeah.
At some point, and where I really first experienced it was working at Roush. Mm-hmm. When it was a 9 to 5. It's like race car stuff is like, yeah, whatever. And I mean, it was a couple years after I moved back home from doing that before I could really do much more than an autocross here or there.
Yeah.
I'm going to say burnt out.
Sure.
But I ended up, the motorcycle racing recharged me, and then now I'm recharged on car stuff, and I'm full speed ahead,
Yeah.
But it does get a little monotonous. Like, I don't get to do some of the development that I'd like to do on my car because I'm working on customer stuff. But then again, it's a lot easier to go racing when you got somebody else helping you pay the bills.
Right. Yeah, no question. I got to work on figuring that part out.
Right. Me too.
One last bike question. You said desert. Have you done the Baja 1000?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. I soloed it twice, and I did it. I had a team that I did it with one year too.
So I always like finding people who've done the iconics, and I consider the Baja 1000 one of the iconics. It ranks up there with, in my mind, Le Mans, Daytona 24, Daytona 500. This is one of those, if you are an off-road racer, there's a handful: Dakar, Baja 1000. These are the top. I've seen stadium super trucks. I've seen short course off road. I don't think anything really compares to Baja or the Dakar. So, what is that experience like? Let's talk about both solo and solo for 1,000 miles on a bike in the desert. That takes a set, doesn't it?
30 plus hours on a bike. It's I was dumb enough to do it twice. It's one of those kind of things. It's like, it's not necessarily the smartest thing I've done, but man, you talk about an experience, and, you're down there pretty much for a month. You go down and if you do it right, you go down and do your homework, you do a bunch of pre-running, what the course is. But it's funny, you go down and you run, say they open the course November 1st, and you go down and start pre-running. By the time you get to the race at the end of the month, the course has changed completely.
Sure.
Trophy trucks with 40-inch tires on them, they tear the dirt up.
Oh, yeah.
And it's different when you're on a bike,
And it's the same exact course for everybody, right? You don't get your own bike.
It is.
I suppose you could take a slightly different...
Then again, it's not, because the first bike on the track is not going to have the same course that the last bike on the track does.
Right. That's the course. That's the case with pretty much all non-pavement sports, right?
Right.
Like even sprint cars. The track on the first lap is not the track you've got on the last lap of that race.
Right.
So, and that takes a whole different level of because it's like I told a story from Solo Nationals. I worked on the car a little bit, and on a final run at Solo Nationals, in the middle of the first corner, it did something it had never done before. And I literally had 70 seconds to figure out all right, now will it do it again? Because it did what I wanted it to do, but I could never get it to do. It rotated.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, now can I count on it rotating the next time I needed to? So I had to make a decision in my brain to do that. So I was basically learning the car and the course all over again in the course of 70 seconds. It's the same with like the Baja, right? You're learning the course
you're always
every
adapting.
time you're on it.
You're always adapting. You got to, what's in front of you. It's like, that big ass rock that's in the middle of the course wasn't there last time through here, you know?
Yeah. Okay. So here's the question. How does that experience transfer to road racing?
The only way I could really say that transfers over would be your reaction to something happening in front of you.
Yeah.
Somebody spins in front of you and you can avoid them. I've been pretty lucky on that side. I haven't really hit anybody hard that has spun in front of me.
Right.
Now I've been on the receiving end is why we're rebuilding, but it's if you can react and make the proper reaction to avoid an issue.
Yeah.
I think that would be the quick thinking.
Yeah. So, and I would also think that maybe if you ever come upon a piece of track that's been oiled down that wasn't oiled down the last time, your brain maybe grabs that data quicker and says, and it allows you to make the better decision, or I don't know if there's ever a right decision in that, but you're kind of making decisions as you go, and it's more. I would say it's less of a decision than it is muscle memory, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'd even add rain to that.
Sure.
Because you're always searching for grip.
Right.
And that's, off road, you're always searching for the better line.
Sure.
What's the smoothest way through those whoops?
Right. Right. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. All right. So we got you here to talk about that car sitting behind you there. And we've got some pictures that I'll put up here that you won't be able to see while I'm putting them up, but I will put them up. But let's talk about that. I'm going to take a quick stop here to talk about the people that helped me put this show on. So hang with me for just a second, and let me thank all those folks that are here. And the first one I want to thank is the ones over my shoulder here. It is, of course, RacingWire.com. They are our presenting sponsor for 2025. On board now for a little bit here with us. Great folks. They are based at Buttonwillow and Willow Springs, mostly Buttonwillow these days, and it's going to be a whole lot of fun having them on board. A great school. They do an SCCA licensing school, so you can go in 3 days from nothing to license, of course, if you pass. They don't just pass you because you've written your check. You actually have to do the stuff to get passed. But on top of that, they've got driver safety courses and a great teenage driver safety course. And they have a great system that they use, a lot of one-on-one coaching. And it's just pretty remarkable. So check them out, raceschool.com, for everything you need there. Also, brand new with us right now is William R. Pinterick and Associates. I believe Ryan probably knows who I'm talking about here. This is Dave Pinterick. He is one of our racers, and he's on board this year. And he drives in GT1 and Spec MX-5. If you need any financial services, check Dave out with all of his stuff. David out with all of his stuff. His stuff will be in the show notes as well. Racekeeper, the official in-car camera of Inside the SCCA. Great folks there. Their information also in the show notes. And then we have got Solo Performance Specialties. If you are an autocrosser and you go to any of the National Tour events, you'll find David and his people there with Solo Performance Specialties. You can also order online from them as well. And then finally, Ray Esports, the official sim racing league of Inside the SCCA. Great folks there. Stevie Ray puts on a great series, several great series actually. A lot of actual racers participate, so they treat the sim racing a little more like there's actual consequences if you hit something, which is nice because none of us like to get hit out of a sim race any more than we like being hit out of a regular race. So check out Ray Esports for that. All right, we are back now with Ryan Gutile. He is here, and we're talking about now what happens after you have a wreck. So you've had, I guess, 2 this year, right? You went over.
I had two big ones, yeah.
You went ass over tea kettle at Portland. Tell me about that one real quick.
Man, it was kind of bizarre. It started out as a nothing deal. I missed downshift, got into the grass, ended up spinning around backwards, sliding backwards up to the wall. And when I hit the tire wall, the right rear of the car climbed the tire wall, and I came to a stop, and I'm like, okay, we're done moving. And then it started to roll over real gently on its top. And the wall hit did more damage than the upside down did.
Yeah.
I mean, it literally, I could have just driven it away.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, it ended up not being a big deal. I went out and qualified second and STL 30 minutes later.
I remember because we heard that there was a car that went over in that session, because this was for the Super Tour, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was in Portland, and I knew a car went over. I didn't know which car went over. And then, because we didn't have good connections with the Flagnet up at Portland.
Yeah.
But I remember we had stopped it, and they said there was a car upside down, and it was the fastest cleanup of ever a car upside down. and then halfway through the next session, they were saying, "Wow, that car's pretty fast for a car that was upside down a half hour ago." I'm like, "What are y'all talking about?" So did you see Amy Mills' tiny rollover at the runoffs? Did you see the video?
No, I didn't. I missed that one.
It sounds like yours and hers were almost identical. She had broken a suspension piece, slid into the wall, and it kind of went up on the wall and it just went bloop. And she's like, I barely even touched the wall, it felt like, and all of a sudden I was upside down.
Yeah, it was, like I say, I ended up coming to a stop, and I'm like, all right, we're done. I'm going to have to wait for somebody to get me off the wall, but
Right.
you know, I'm done.
Yeah.
And it started to roll and I'm like, no, don't. And next thing I know, my whole world's upside down, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what happened at the runoffs. That was a very different situation, right?
Yeah. So it was in testing and I'm ashamed of that fact. You know, it's like, you're not supposed to be out there 10 tenths testing, you know? I was like fourth quick on Saturday and struggling to the course the track felt really good for me on Saturday. Sunday came around and it's like the setup changed. And I was chasing it all day Sunday, and Monday I'd made a change and we went out first session, last day of testing, and coming through the kink, there was guys were pulling me a little bit. So I'm like, yeah, okay, here we go. Let's just suck it up and go for it. And I ended up, I was using the curbs to turn the car just a little bit. And the setup change that I made was a little bit too far. So the car got a little bit too loose. And this is going back and looking at the video and data. Basically, I caught the car too quickly.
Right.
Had I not caught the car, I wouldn't have. I caught it and then it pushed out and I pushed driver's left off of the kink. Had I not caught it, it probably I would have been right on track. It would have been perfect. It would have turned the car perfect. So it's, you know, driver error, you know, but dropped wheels on the left and came back on and was doing a big tank slapper. I thought I had it saved. And I knew I had, you know, 4 or 5 cars behind me that were fairly close. Just about got it gathered up and I dropped a wheel again on the left side, came across, hit the wall, tore the right front corner off. So now I'm both pedals in and no brakes because there's no caliper on that corner anymore.
Yeah.
And came back across the track and Nick Leverone happened to be wrong place, wrong time and got me in the left front corner.
Yeah.
And his car was worse than mine. His car would have been, we're not rebuilding it.
Yeah.
It was that bad. But mine, in fact, going over and talking to the Mazda Motorsports guys afterwards, they're like, well, are you sure? You know, you might be able to fix it. And I'm like, you know, I didn't even open the hood. Let's go look at it.
Yeah.
So I went back over and looked at it. And then I'm like, yeah, that shock tower is too far moved to be fixing that.
Right. So when the after you get your mind back in your body, because, you know, that whenever I've had a situation like that for the first, I don't know, hour or whatever, you just kind of have to gather yourself. You're not thinking much about the car, or whatever you are thinking probably isn't accurate. Once you get yourself, you know, the adrenaline comes down, you have that conversation with Mazda. Did you make the decision to rebuild rather than build a new one come when you're at the track, or is it something you had to come home, do some more investigation?
That was at home.
Yeah.
That's after I got it home. The thought was that, I could probably fix it, but I've got a donor car that I could build probably just as quick. So I'm kind of, I was waffling at that point.
Okay.
But after I got it home and started, you know, pulling the carnage apart and looking at different things, it's like, you know, this isn't bent that bad and that isn't bent that bad. If I pull this back and then cut this off and replace it, and you start figuring it out and get a game plan, and it's like, I think I can do this quicker than building a new car.
Right. Okay. So, but you had a donor car that you could have used, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, it's still, when this car's back together, I'm going to start building it so I have a spare.
Right. No, that's great. So, the thought process when you're trying to decide to rebuild or build, I'm guessing for there's two thoughts. One is speed. What can you do quicker? And then there's cost. What's the most cost-effective thing to do? It sounds like for you, the decision was more on what's faster to do.
Yeah, at this point, yeah. Because money, I figured, was going to end up kind of being a wash, because it's like, I could take everything off this car, put on the other one, except for all the stuff that was broke that I have to fix if I fix this one anyway.
Right.
So, you know, really a big part of it is, you know, I do all my own work.
Right.
So for me, that's a big chunk of change that I don't have to pay for.
Sure.
Whereas somebody else that's, hiring me to do it, you got to pay me by the hour too. So it's going to be less cost efficient
Right.
to have me do it than it would be for me to do my own.
Right. Exactly. Okay. So let's run down once you started doing the debrief, the postmortem, I'd like to call it. What is all of the stuff that you found? Do you have in your head? Do you have a laundry list of these are the things I realized that I got to make sure aren't bad anymore?
Well, so the other piece of that puzzle was just before I wrecked it, I had picked up a parts car that was a blown up, scrap car basically, and the front clip on it was perfect.
Oh, good.
So it was like, okay, well, there's a donor clip. So let's look at this and see how bad it is. Is the firewall wrinkled? Is the tunnel wrinkled? That would have been, for me, that would have been the deal breaker if the tunnel had some wrinkles in it.
Okay.
Now the tunnel was dented, transmission hit it and that kind of stuff. It's amazing how violent that hit was, because from a driver standpoint, it didn't feel it. Yeah. I had no pain getting out.
Oh,
I mean, there was no issues, but yet, broke motor mounts. The motor came over and hit the shock tower. The transmission came over and hit the tunnel. I mean, it moved a lot of stuff that I was really surprised it moved.
That's probably why you felt less, because stuff moved and absorbed a lot of the crunch,
right?
Rather than you having to absorb the crunch,
right?
Yeah. So did you end up replacing the front clip, or did you start pushing and pulling?
I did. I ended up pulled it all down to a bare chassis, like one of the pictures I'd sent you there, the one on the trailer, and that was on its way to the frame rack.
Okay.
I'm a fairly small shop. I don't have a frame rack. I don't have a bore and hone for doing motors, that kind of stuff. I'll do my assembly of motors, but I end up farming that out. Mike Haig took good care of me for taking care of machine work stuff. Sure. So I found a guy that would work with me on a frame rack, and we pulled it back into place. And that's one that's getting fewer and farther between too. People aren't fixing cars anymore, so there isn't too many guys that really know what they're doing with a frame rack.
Right.
But I got him to pull it all back, and he was enjoying the project. He's like, you're going to have to come down and help me too. He's a small shop too. Yeah. And because you're going to have to come down and help me. And we got it pulled back into place. And he goes, well, I'm thinking, let's go ahead and cut off the front clip, and let's go ahead and do that while it's on the rack. That way we can still measure and stuff with it. And so I ended up getting the whole front clip. Basically, I drug my welder down there and got it pretty well put back together. At least I'm going to say tacked together and in place.
Yeah.
And then drug it home and did all my final welding and cleaning and repaint the chassis. And I was already thinking over the winter that I wanted to, take it apart and repaint the undercarriage. But
yeah,
I was like, that's a lot of work. Well, I didn't have a choice. I had to.
So do you torch that front clip off, or do you Sawzall it off?
Yes.
Okay. So when you're getting ready to do it, you got the Sawzall, you got the torch, you're like, I don't know, and then you just got to have to jump in and do it. It's got to be scary.
Yeah, that's kind of it. I mean, you plan it out before you go cutting anything. It's like measure twice and cut once.
Sure.
But basically, the torch part ended up not even being my deal. It was the guy at the body shop. Sure. He's like, yeah, we can just cut this out, right? I'm like, okay, that's beyond where we're going to use.
Right.
But I picked spots, factory spot welds and that kind of stuff. Sure. And a lot of spot weld cutter stuff. Mm-hmm. And then, it's like you take that, the donor clip and just take the Sawzall and just cut it off and leave yourself extra.
Yeah.
And now you can go back and you can cut spot welds and peel off what you don't want.
Sure.
On the other car, it's the other way. You cut off the stuff that's all bent and screwed up, and then grind spot welds and pick out the pieces that don't belong.
Yeah. So you never want to do that job. Okay.
No.
You never want to do it, but now you're put yourself in a position where you got to do it, or you've decided to do it. Now you're close to done. I can see it behind you. It doesn't have a front bumper on it, but I've seen some pictures. You've got a lot of work done. Was it fun?
It's a tough one to answer anymore, right?
Okay.
When I'm all done with it, I'm like, yeah, that was fun.
Okay.
But when I'm doing it, it's like, this is a pain in the butt. That's a pain in the butt. What am I going to do with this? It's the challenge, and I think that's part of my deal is I enjoy a challenge.
Yeah. I love driving. Absolutely love it. But I love working on cars. I when I'm cranky, my wife says, "Go change oil in a car." and I say, "Well, I just did it last week. Go do it again. You're cranky." Well, I'll find something else to do, but I call it garage therapy.
Yeah.
I just enjoy it. It's a little different though when you're put yourself. I'm guessing you're on a timetable because you want to get back out there this year.
Yep.
So, and it's not a tiny project doing what you're doing.
No, and in fact, I planned on having the car together and going and doing a track day this weekend to shake it down, but obviously that didn't happen. Life's got in the way. It's that time of year. There's Christmas parties and everything else going on. You know.
Are you going to be with us at Buttonwillow for the inaugural race on the circuit?
I will.
Yeah,
I will.
That's
our first race on the program this year is going to be the majors at Podium Club in Arizona.
Okay.
So
that's the week before Buttonwillow.
January 18th or 17th, 18th, something like that.
Sure.
That may be my shakedown run on the test day before. We'll see what happens.
Right. So what's left to do?
Yesterday I did a bunch of powder coating stuff. Basically put a radiator back in it and put the front clip back on, the body work back on it. Okay. The fenders are just hung on it because I'm waiting on one more door.
Okay.
So like there's another example. I say I do all my own stuff. I did the quarter panels. I did the body and paint on them.
Right.
But I've got a guy that does pretty good work for me for a reasonable price. So I took fenders and doors and all the pieces to him and said, "Hey, can you do these for me?" Because it freed me up to work on the rest of it.
Right.
So I'm waiting for a door before I can put the fenders back on. I'm waiting for a hood before I can put the fenders back on, that kind of thing.
And is he just spraying them for you? Is that what it is?
Yeah, he's just spraying them.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Motor and trans from the old car, did you have to do anything with it?
So the motor had a broken motor mount.
Okay. But
otherwise pretty good shape. There was one coolant line on the back of the head that came over and hit the firewall and bent it. And in process, it cut one of the hoses. But for the most part, motor, no issues at all.
Okay.
Transmission, there was no issues with, but it had a little bit of a leak, and it was time for a refresh anyway. Okay. So I put in my spare, and I'm going to rebuild that one hopefully before Podium Club.
Got it.
But it's still a good spare, but I'm like, I got this other one that's perfect. I'll put it in and start the year fresh.
Right.
But
yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, front suspension was every control arm on the front of it was broken.
Okay.
Broken or bent, and one of the uprights was broke. The other one was still okay. Yeah. But I'm going to replace it anyhow because it took a hit.
Sure.
It took a hit too. So
when you have a donor car, is it smart to take those parts off the donor car, or do you want to just start fresh so you buy new and put them on?
It depends on the part, and it depends on what you know about the car.
Sure.
This particular donor car was pretty low mileage. It was like a 23,000 mile car. Oh. So I didn't end up using any of the control arms or anything off it. I just bought new ones just because, I want 100%.
Right.
And they looked like they maybe had a little bit of a rough life.
Okay.
So it's a case by case, you look at it. Obviously any wear items, it's like, why don't you just put new ones on them?
Yeah. Yeah.
If they're good, keep them for a spare, know?
Right. Safety gear. Did you replace a lot of stuff just because it went through a wreck and you want to make sure the belts weren't stretched too much, that kind of stuff?
So no, my wreck was really unique in that I didn't have any fore and aft really. It was kind of a hit on a corner. Obviously you inspect it all.
Right.
The one of them that I did after my rollover and then after this wreck, I used Race Tech seats because I feel like they're a superior, and pulled them out, inspected them. I had some bent mounts one of the times, but the seats were still solid. No cracks around bolt holes, that kind of stuff. Make sure they're good. But if there's ever any question, replace it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you're coming to the tail end of this project. You had decided when I'm going to rebuild versus build. Still the right decision?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. It's coming out pretty good.
Good.
We get it on track and see how it works. There's an old adage, the NASCAR guys used to, it doesn't run good until you bend it once, so I may come out of the box even faster than I was before. That's what I'm hoping for.
That's too good. All right. So what are your plans for 2025? What's your schedule? What you looking to do?
I'm going to run all the Western Conference stuff, SCCA. And now that we're in SCCA class, I don't have to worry about jumping over and running NASA and doing any of their stuff. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to run the Western Conference, and I'm going to throw in some more super tours. I'm talking about going to Hallett, also talking about going to the sprints, and planning on going to the runoffs again.
Have you been to Hallett before?
I haven't.
Oh my gosh. I am, when I went there 2 years ago, and I was like, really? I got to go to Oklahoma? and in the middle of nowhere, and first of all, it is one of the coolest racetracks you will ever drive on.
That's what I've heard.
It is so cool. The people are fantastic. The couple that owns the racetrack and runs it, fantastic people. And Tulsa, the area surrounding it, there's some nice little restaurants and mom and pops, and there's nowhere to stay near Hallett. You've got to stay in Tulsa, so it's like a 25-minute drive. I will tell you, if you're going to Hallett from Tulsa, don't miss the exit. Because it's like 14 miles to the next exit. I was jamming to the music and singing a song, and I drove right past the exit. And I'm like, my Waze is doing crazy stuff, and I'm like, what? And I'm like, oh no! And then I'm like, and I drove past 25 of those little cut-throughs that are for the state police. And I'm like, oh, you know what? I'll be the guy, and they'll stop me, and then I got a California driver's license, and they go, we got a guy from California, we're gonna stick it to him. I'm like, so it's like a half-hour round trip to get back.
Yeah.
So don't miss the exit.
I'm pulling a 40-foot trailer, so to make that U-turn probably isn't a good idea either.
Yeah. So don't miss the exit. But you're gonna love Hallett if you get to go out there. I'm sad. Greg loves Hallett as well, and I got to go the last 2 years, and he wanted to go this year. So, I'm not gonna go. But it's a ton of fun, and it's a great racetrack. I would do the test day because it is a technical. If there is a test day, it is a really technical racetrack. But it's a ton of fun from everybody I've talked to. I did a couple of laps in the rental car. And so I wasn't doing anything too stupid, but it's a lot of fun. So cool. Real quick before I let you go, what are your thoughts on the circuit at Buttonwillow?
I'm disappointed that I didn't run the last race of the year and get to go and make a hot lap of it. I'm excited about it. I don't know much about it, so it's going to be interesting. Wished I could get some seat time on it before I had to race it, but it is what it is. Same for everybody.
Well, the good news is nobody's getting seat time in it before they get to race it because you're going to the first event, Yeah. I think there's a test day beforehand, and that will be everybody's first chance to go out there with actual race cars. And I think it's pretty fun and awesome that they kept the first event for the club. I think that was pretty nice that they did that. And then right after that, you'll get the test session before the Super Tour. That event's kind of like your Super Tour test session. So it should be a ton of fun. So, and
I'm actually signed up for a track day after that at the circuit there. So
cool.
I'm going to try to get as much time on there as I can before the Super Tour.
Yeah. So this is your chance to thank a bunch of folks who help you with your program, and I know you've got some guys and gals that are involved. So give it a shot. Say thank you. I got to start with
my mom and dad for getting me into this deal.
Nice,
because that's a big one there. I wouldn't be here without them. My wife Laura, she's real supporting in all of this. Helps me make it happen. Fills in whatever I need. She's a spotter on the radio. She's going to get nice for the cool suit, makes me lunch, all the necessities,
Yep.
I've had a couple of driver coaches that I've worked with over the years. Ernie Beckers was a real good one for me to get started. And now I'm using Chris Nunes, and he's been amazing. He's helped me make some very big progress this last season. Hague Performance has hooked me up when I've needed it for engine stuff. Man, there's a bunch of people. Those are the ones I can think of right offhand. Mazda Motorsports, I can't forget them because they're over the top. Josh and all those guys are always doing whatever they can to help you.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Ryan, good luck with the finishing the build. Good luck as you get into next season. I've just a pleasure having you on, and
thanks for having me.
We'll definitely have you on again down the road somewhere.
Sounds good.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Inside the SCCA, presented by RacingWire.com. If you like what you're hearing, subscribe to the RacingWire Podcast Network so you won't miss any episodes. Also be great if you leave a comment, especially if it's a good one. Follow us on social media to find out who our next guest is and to leave a question on Twitter. It's at Race Announcer. There's a new Inside the SCCA every week. I'm Brian Bielanski. Have yourself a fantastic weekend. Stay safe and go play with cars.